Why does my leg give out? Why can't I put my weight on that leg? Why is that a part of sciatica? Coming up next. So welcome back. One of the common symptoms that people express to me, and that I also had with my sciatica, was that I couldn't put my weight fully on that leg. My left leg, no problem. I could put my pants on my right leg, standing on my left. When I went to stand on the right, it was like, that's not gonna work. I would either feel like my leg was gonna give out, not hold me, or I would have terrible pain. And so I would have to sit on the bed to pull my pants up on that side. And when we understand the tensional systems and the imbalance in the tensional systems, this really makes sense, and it's really not that hard to fix. So let's jump right in. Sciatica September, welcome back. When we feel that weakness in the hip, 99% of the time, it's coming from weakness in the outer hip muscles, which are gluteus minimus and gluteus medius. I call these muscles the rotator cuff of the hip because what they do is they stabilize the femur in the socket. When that femur is nice and stable in the socket, you can be full weight bearing, no problem. What I have seen most of the time with folks who have that hip weakness or leg weakness, feels like they can't hold themselves fully on that side, is that is often the long side or the high hip side. That was true in my case. It's true in about 85 to 90% of the people that I've worked with over the many years that I've been doing this work. So it's most often the high hip side. Now, sometimes it is the low hip side. Either way, what it indicates is that those muscles, gluteus minimus and gluteus medius, are loaded with trigger points, loaded with tension, and trigger points are a constant draw of energy on those muscles. They're constantly in a state of contraction. They are constantly being exhausted. So when you go to put your weight on them, their job is to hold that femur steady in the socket, or else you collapse. So when those muscles are exhausted and loaded with tension and trigger points, you put your weight on there and the femur kind of is less stable. And so your body, as a way to protect you and help you, goes, oh, don't do that. Don't do that action. Don't put your weight here. And you're going down. Also, that's just for the weakness part. Now, it might also begin to activate some of your sciatic pain just to put weight on that leg. That is commonly an indication that you have trigger points in your quadratus lumborum, which stabilizes the lumbar spine, or you're having trigger points in that glute min and glute med, they're stabilizing the hip, weight bearing. So if you go to put your weight on and you get that radiating, shooting pain, or you get that weakness, then most of the time that glute min, glute med, maybe QL in the low back really need to be adjusted and released. You can do self trigger point release work on that glute min and on that glute med. And then I've seen it instantaneously. 1 minute later, person is able to fully put their weight on that leg. Now here's the catch. As I've been teaching, everything is a big system. It's not just one muscle in isolation, or in this case, two, glute min and glute med. Muscles do not work in isolation. Our muscular system is a beautiful, exquisite symphony of the instruments of the muscles all working together to support each other and to support you. When things get really out of balance and the muscles become weak, they're just not able to do their job. But often, the muscles that are crying out in pain or causing our symptoms are actually the ones that are at the end of the tensional line. So you can't just go into glute min and glute med, release those trigger points, and expect to be fixed for good. For a lot of reasons, but also because they're often the end of the line. And they're often on the high hip side because those muscles attach along the top rim of the pelvis, they attach into the top of the femur. When the hip is pulled high, those muscles get pulled really long, and muscles hate to be pulled long all the time. They start constantly contracting, trying to pull that side of the pelvis back down to create balance in your hips. When they get stuck in like a unlevel pelvis, and that side and those muscles get pulled long, they're like, oh, they can't do their job. They've lost their leverage, or what we also call mechanical advantage. They've lost that ability to really do their job well. So they just give up. They just give out because they can't hold up your weight and pull the femur back in the socket. So that means you also have to release the inner thighs. You also have to release and work with the low back. These muscles all work together. The inner thighs pull the legs towards each other. The outer hips pull the legs, or glutes, pull the legs away from each other. They're in a constant dynamic interplay. So with, let's say the right hip is sitting high, that's the weak side. That's the side you can't put your weight on. When that right hip is high and those muscles are long and weak, the muscles that are short are the right inner thighs, the right adductor muscles. The muscles that are short are the right quadratus lumborum, maybe even psoas. So releasing psoas, releasing quadratus lumborum, releasing the inner thighs. Sometimes you won't even have to release those glutes. They're already released because what's pulling on them has been shifted. I hope that makes sense, because it's a really important factor in truly healing your sciatica pain and sciatica weakness. Often that leg that we're experiencing the pain on is weak. Now, if it's on the other side, if it's on the low hip side, and the pelvis is dropped down, let's say the high hip side is still the right, the low hip side is the left, those glutes now are scrunched up and stuck, right? They're the short ones. Start with the short ones. Release those muscles and build some strength in the quadratus lumborum above, and we're going to cover more about that later in the series. That's going to help balance the pelvis, lift it back up to neutral, and then the muscles can all work effectively. So in summary, sciatica-related leg weakness or hip weakness or inability to stand with your weight on that side is a function of balancing the tension and the pull in the inner thighs, the outer hips, and the low back. The key muscles that allow you to put your weight on that leg are glute med and glute min. Working with those muscles and the muscles that work in opposition of it will instantaneously, almost always, give you that strength that you're looking for. So continue watching this series. Keep up with our Sciatica September. You're getting all the pieces of the puzzle. Sciatica is not something you can fix in one video, right? There's pieces of the puzzle. So I'm going to link a video with doing that glute min release, link a video and doing that glute med release. And we're continuing to build your library of understanding as we go through this month. Kat Matlock here at FreeBody. Thanks for joining in. Take care.